we've seen martial law being imposed in South Korea in the past. What this basically means is that the military authorities will take control. Okay, it's a temporary phenomenon. Okay, there can be some ramifications in terms of suspending and putting on hold normal civil rights, for instance. And I think it's important to be clear that South Korea has seen martial law being imposed in the past by past presidents. Okay, we have to go back a fair few decades, before South Korea transitioned to being a full-fledged democracy. And I think this is something that will resonate very clearly with the South Korean population as we.
The president of South Korea went on television and declared martial law. It was completely unexpected, this late night address across South Korea. Now, he says the move is necessary to protect his country from North Korea's communist forces and to eliminate anti-state elements. Let's just hear a quick clip of this announcement.
I declare martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korean communist forces, to eradicate the despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are plundering the freedom and happiness of our people, and to protect the free constitutional order.
We can bring in Dr. Edward Howell from Oxford University. He's an expert on the Korean Peninsula. Dr. Howell, I'm sure you've been following events very closely in this part of Asia. Were you expecting this announcement today?
I think the key element of surprise is the fact that this announcement was so unexpected. It comes at a time, of course, when the North Korean nuclear threat is increasing, North Korea actively sending troops to Russia, but it also comes at a time when South Korea, for President Yoon, he's in a very precarious position. His popularity has plummeted. He has been mired in scandals, not least involving his wife. And I think all of these factors combined paint a pretty bleak environment. But nobody expected the president to go on television unexpectedly and announce martial law.
Have you seen the same footage as we have of events around the Assembly building right now? The Parliament building does look to have a lot of troops around it, and indeed people are now entering the building as well. Do you know what's going on right there now?
Well, what we know at the moment is that we know that the head of the ruling party, the People Power Party, and we know that the leader of the opposition have said that they would vote against this imposition of martial law. But given its suddenness, I think the prospects for wider consequences. We know that South Korea has not been immune to clashes in the past between different political factions and protests. But the protest, the possibility for ramifications is very much in the realm of unknown. I think what's worrying is that we don't know much about this.
No. I mean, what we do know is certainly the BBC is now reporting that the police in South Korea, in Seoul, are enforcing martial law, a clash, if you like, with protesters trying to get through the gates of the parliament. So things are looking decidedly stormy in Seoul right now. Can you just, for those of us who've been fortunate enough to live in Britain all our lives, what is martial law? What does it mean?
So what we see is we've seen martial law being imposed in South Korea in the past. What this basically means is that the military authorities will take control. Okay, it's a temporary phenomenon. Okay, there can be some ramifications in terms of suspending and putting on hold normal civil rights, for instance. And I think it's important to be clear that South Korea has seen martial law being imposed in the past by past presidents. Okay, we have to go back a fair few decades, before South Korea transitioned to being a full-fledged democracy. And I think this is something that will resonate very clearly with the South Korean population as we speak.
Is there any link at all between what's happening in South Korea and the fact that Joe Biden is in the dying weeks of his presidency and Donald Trump is about to take over?
We need to be careful to avoid undue speculation. I think what's important to bear in mind for now is that there are so many factors that could have contributed to President Yoon's decision. Firstly, his insecurity, his real precariousness, the precarity of his position. But secondly, all of these other threats, the geopolitical issues that we have seen, the North Korean nuclear threat, North Korea's involvement in the Russian war with Ukraine. President Yoon himself cited the fact that he wanted to get rid of, quote, pro-North Korean elements within South Korea. Is that a distraction tactic? Is that a sort of swipe at the left, who have been more vocal about President Yoon's North Korean foreign policy and in opposition to it? Perhaps. We simply do not know enough information at the moment.
Okay. And there are American troops in South Korea, aren't there? Quite a few.
Indeed, there are. I mean, there have long been US troops stationed in South Korea. This is something that has also become under scrutiny recently because of President-elect Trump, sorry's alleged claims that he would seek to either redeploy them or pull them out of South Korea. Yes.
Right. When did you last visit the country?
I was last in South Korea fairly recently, about a month ago. I think what's interesting to bear in mind is that South Korea is a flourishing, what the South Korean government calls global pivotal state. Right?
Yes.
It is a big economic powerhouse. It's a big technological powerhouse. It has striven to capture and encompass its identity as a provider of global security. And it's interesting that President Yoon has said that his foreign policy will go on and will not be affected by this. But clearly, this will impact how other countries look and think about South Korea as well.
And in North Korea, how will this be being received there?
That is a question obviously we cannot answer at the moment. I mean, we know that North Korea likes to take advantage of crises in South Korea. We saw this very clearly when the former South Korean president Park Geun-hye was impeached. North Korea really used it as an opportunity to lampoon the South Korean president, and South Korean democracy. So we should prepare ourselves for something similar. Perhaps, yes.
Okay, Dr. Howell, thank you very much indeed. That is Dr. Edward Howell from Oxford University, an expert on the Korean Peninsula.
So Sally asked that question, what exactly does martial law involve? And under this particular decree, because it was fleshed out a little bit by the president, all medical staff, including trainee doctors, are to return to work in 48 hours. All media and publishers are to be under the control of the martial law command. Those who violate martial law can be arrested without warrant, and the decree claims it will minimise any inconvenience to people's lives except anti-regime forces. As Jane mentioned, just according to the live footage that we're seeing here in the studio, it does appear that a lot of people are congregating around the National Assembly and trying to get in. There is a police presence there. There are troops there as well. It is very difficult to tell at the moment exactly who is who, though.